Hello, it's exactly 4 in Cairo. It's now time for World of Info. Hello everybody and welcome. This is World of Info and we're starting right away with Dr. Amr Mabrouk, Professor Plastic Surgery at Ain Shams University, Dua Mohammed at the controls, I'm Najla Naguib, and we're with you until 5 o'clock, so stay with us. And today we have the pleasure of our guest, Professor NASSER Kotby, Professor Emeritus of Pediatrics and Otolaryngology at Ain Shams University.
Well, it's a great pleasure to have with us His Excellency, Professor NASSER Kotby. Professor NASSER Kotby is my mentor, and he teaches us not only through attending his lectures and his very interesting lectures about phoniatrics, as it's part of our domain in plastic surgery, but he taught us a lot of things about life. I had the honor and privilege during my years as a medical student in Ain Shams University back in the 80s to have Professor Kotby as our mentor and the man who used to guide us through old Egypt. We went with him in different trips to Upper Egypt, to Luxor, to Aswan, and the road in between, and through the roads and the alleys of Al-Mu'azz al-Dinillah, and in the northern cemetery and the southern cemetery, and everywhere there is a place of stone where there is part of history of Egypt. We have taken Professor NASSER Kotby as a guide to us to the truth and to the history of Egypt. Professor Kotby is a multi-talented person. He speaks about 7 or 8 languages, I lost count, but at the same time he is an avid traveler. He traveled all through the world, from the North Pole to the South Pole, to all the countries and the continents of the world, marking his map of travels through the years of his rich life, and at the same time having photographs, memories and writings about the places that he visited. And he has written books about Islam and books about Egyptian history and books about Norway, where he considered it to be his second home, as he worked there in Norway in the 60s and in the 70s and also in Sweden. But still, Professor NASSER Kotby has in our hearts a big place as a teacher and as a professor. And today we are very proud to have him with us in the program, not just to talk about his experiences as we always do, not to talk about the 7-course meals that he presents to us when he's inviting us for dinner, about food that he is cooking it himself, but today we're going to talk about the history of Egypt through ages. And this is a book that Professor Kotby has spent almost 40 or 50 years of his life trying to write, to edit, and to pick the decent plates and the color plates. And today we have the pleasure and privilege to sail through the sea of history of Egypt and talk about Egypt and the Egyptians. And we are very proud to have a proud citizen of Egypt, a man who considers Egypt and Egyptians to be a very important part of his heritage. Sir, thank you very much for coming in this afternoon, and the mic is yours. Tell us about this book, please.
Sorry to clear my voice, to clear my larynx. Yes, where to start? This is the question. Yes, I look now at the 4 volumes of that book called The History of Egypt Through the Ages, an illustrated summary, because 4 volumes for the history of Egypt must be a summary. If anybody have the endeavor to write a book about the history of Egypt, it must go up to 20 volumes if it's going to be detailed. But this is a summary. And maybe people are wondering, what Professor Emeritus in the Faculty of Medicine will write about the history? And I've been mocked at in some publishers in Cairo. Why are you coming? When I sit with the history committee in some of them, the first thing, why are you coming here? What's your business? Isn't it enough with the Faculty of Medicine? Anyhow, I liked history through my life. We had in my model school, which I was lucky to study in, a very good team of teaching us history and geography and other topics related. And we had a library in the school, and I was fascinated by history. And the teachers encouraged me. Then I walked around in Egypt before I went with you. I walked around in Egypt and visited. The first trip for me in Luxor was in 1958. I repeat, 1958. And luckily I had a good, we were a group of students of the Faculty of Medicine. We were introduced nicely to this thing in Luxor and Aswan and the Upper Egypt, I mean. And then I started traveling the world, I started reading, and also I focused on the Islamic Cairo. In some Ramadans, when it was in the winter, I was finishing my work in the hospital, and then I will go and visit all these wonderful treasures, about 600 of the major archaeological treasures in Cairo, Islamic. So I started having this, and then it started also to collect books and a big library, relatively big library, about all the periods of Egypt.
Yes, I've seen it.
You have seen it. You confirm my word. Okay. So
incredible.
So with this thing in my history, I kept telling. I even refrained of defending myself when I sat with the history committee in one of the major publishers in Egypt when I was fighting to publish this. And I come to the book later on, but why I'm interested in history. And then I will keep on inviting friends in either international congress taking place in Egypt, then I take them in groups, or visiting me, I take them individuals. And then they started in the locations, those who didn't know me. Most of the guards knew me well, up till now, many years ago. And they will start coming, are you a guide? And then I get furious and make a row once in the Egyptian Museum in Tahrir. And I decided to take the exam to be an official guide. And I managed to take it. And I took it and got the permission with 5 languages. I took of the 8 you mentioned, only 5. And I've been examined, of course, in these 5 languages.
Were the Norwegian, Swedish, English,
let's start with Arabic.
Yes, Arabic.
Arabic, English, Swedish, French, Norwegian.
No German?
German is not one of my fluent languages. I read German and I speak German, but it takes time to understand the language. The last is to understand the spoken language. Anyhow, so, and actually this at the end with this meeting with this committee of history, this was my pass to their passion, to their hearts. I'm a guide in Egyptology. So then, though guide in Egyptology is not an academic thing. So, and then I produced a maquette of this book to them. Oh, the book is ready. I said, yes, I'm not coming begging. The book is ready. Take it if you like. And then the lady who was the head of the committee wrote a very nice report about this interview and read it to me to be sure that this, and this went to the top. Any top, I mean, I'm not an important person there. And then a month ago, I was asking, because I left them the book, I want it back. They said, oh, they apologized, they can't publish it. Okay. So, this is my story with why history.
But you published it.
Yes. Do you want to hear the story?
Yes, of course.
Okay, I'm taking your permission. You are the captain here. And with Nagla, of course. Yes. So people ask me, how long did it take you to write this book? I said, 50 years. And actually this is the time I was going reading, studying, and becoming, I was in adoration with this culture. Through all the ages, not only the Pharaonic or the Islamic, the Greek, the Roman, and all the other things. So I started presenting this book in sections as lectures to many Rotarian clubs, to groups of students in the faculty of medicine and to other places. And this, of course, forced me to make slides. And then we started collecting the slides when some people said, you should start writing. And these slides made the core of the book. Mm-hmm. And of course, I kept asking people to tell me how to transfer the slides into a text. It's not easy. And also most of the slides were in English. So we worked with a group of my students whom I thanked in the book here to translate this into Arabic. And I started, because at that time I was not fluent in writing on the computer in Arabic. Of course, my language is Arabic and I respect the Arabic and I dislike people who mix the languages. Arabic for me is a sacred language. Okay? It's not I'm saying English that I want to make it English. It's Arabic, okay? Mm-hmm. But the book is, by the way, the book is in Arabic. And we didn't mention that, okay? Mm-hmm. And I started writing. And the thing is that how to get a designer to make the book. It's a crucial thing. Mm. And I got hold of a designer, and I thanked him very well in the introduction here. And we started collecting these things. And after settling it, of course, this was not the last one, at least 50 revisions. And every time we do, and we add, we remove and put. And then I went with this to the printing house. I asked for a maquette so that I have something with me, concrete, when I talk to people about it. And I designed with them the cover in the print house. This is my design, but with the designer there. So the book took shape. And then came the role of writing a book, making the design, correcting the book, talking about the book is something, and publishing it is something totally different. Mm-hmm. And we went to publishers, major publishers in Egypt. They said, yeah, but if we print it in color, in A4 form, it would be too expensive to sell. I understand. But to make it black, I made maquettes black and white. It was not equally attractive. Mm-hmm. And to put the history of any period, country, in black ink on white paper without illustration, this means that no one will read it. We remain into the dark, complete darkness about the history of our country. Okay? So we started, I mean, I lost hope at a certain stage because it would be very expensive. Because, you know, the bookstore takes a lot of money to sell the books there. It's the light. So anyhow, then the publisher that I'm dealing with now, who published for me the books about Quran, about Norway, and about Hilmiya coming soon, he said, why don't we put it on the net? I thought that this was an insult to me. Mm. It's a knife into my heart. After all that, this is going to be on the screen, no concrete things to hold. I was so sad. But anyhow, they convinced me, this is the modern world. This is the present time. So, and they convinced me that in the Google Book system, it will come, and it gives the people chance to read it, and then if they like it, they will open it for them by a certain sum of money, by the credit card, and they can read it completely, but they can't print it. But there is a point there. Print on demand, and that's why this book is there. So many of my colleagues who have heard me, they signed. We want the book. We signed the book. I think I have 100 signatures now asking for the book. One of them wanted 25 copies.
I got one.
You got one, but it's very heavy. Yes. Because we use very good paper. I think 150 grams. Because you can't print color unless you have good paper.
Of course.
So the book came out in this form, that it is electronic and also paperback. And people would wonder why should I write a history of book about Egypt in Arabic?
Well, this has to be the question after the break.
After the break, okay.
Yes, back again, Word of Info, and you can call us at 2578-9407. Today we have the pleasure and honor with Professor Dr. NASSER Kotby, Professor Emeritus of Phoniatrics and Otolaryngology at Ain Shams University.
Well, again, with Professor NASSER Kotby, Professor of Otolaryngology and Phoniatrics in Ain Shams University, and talking about history of Egypt through ages. And we were just telling you what pushed you to write this book. This book is in Arabic. And I asked you this once, the question about this book, and you said that you want knowledge to propagate. And the fact that a lot of Egyptians are not very well informed about the history of their country makes it difficult for them to know exactly where they are standing. And writing a book that is full of text and black and white, as you said, is a declaration of defeat, because nobody is going to buy this book, because the libraries and the bookshops all over Egypt are full of books talking about history of Egypt, whether this is in English or in Arabic, but yet the people who are reading these books are extremely specialized people or extremely interested people in this subject. So this book is for the layman or for the young students to try to understand, because it's full of plates. What's the aim of it?
Okay. First, this book is for every Egyptian. Every young and old, specialized and non-specialized, school kids or on retirement. It's for everybody. By the way, our library of history in Egypt, particularly in Egypt, of course, we have the history of Egypt, it's not the history of Iraq or Syria, is very weak, very empty. One book which I like very much and cherish a lot, which was by the late Ahmed Hassan, called The Encyclopedia of Egyptian History, written in black ink and white paper. And the man could not really, he got sick at the end of his life, he could not revise. You see, I said 50 revisions I made. But it's for me a treasure in my bookshelf. And I quoted several times here in the 3 volumes.
And who's Ahmed Hassan? Is the one who
Nasser Kotby? Yes, of course. A very refined guy. Okay. Allah yarhamu. But a book that touches all the periods of the history of the long history of Egypt is not common at all. So this is about a book in Arabic in Egypt about the history of Egypt through the ages. It's needed. And the second is that it should be attractive. Attractive means that it should be illustrated and in color plates and in simple summary text. Okay? When you look at my library about the Egyptian history of books about history of Egypt, they're huge books. Most of them are illustrated. Maybe I was attracted by this, that I have so many of those books, tens of them, big and illustrated. So actually it came like that, and it's attractive. So the market in Egypt is not really rich in books in Arabic tackling the history of Egypt through the ages in an attractive and simple way. This is very important. We lack this.
Yes.
Okay? People ask me, why not in English? I said, there are hundreds, literally hundreds and over, of books written about Egypt in English, French, German, Italian, Spanish, Russian, Chinese, and Japanese, and say it.
And they are all in very beautiful color.
Of course, the books are all in other foreign languages, in French and German and Swedish and English, of course. Okay, so I shouldn't write it in English. It's not my goal. My goal is to let people in our country, young and old, know something about the value of their country, the greatness of their country, the beauty of their country. This is not available. How can they know it if they, for example, I was invited to give certain lectures about pieces of that, the topic here. And after I finish it, the main question comes to me at the end, where can we continue reading about that? I couldn't give them. This was about 20 years ago. Now I can tell them. It's the thing. So in order to, I will give it up and down the line. In order to be a good citizen, you must be ready to sacrifice to your country, whether your country is at the bottom of civilization or at the top of civilization. In both phases, it needs your sacrifice. You sacrifice only when you feel belonging to your country. You get belonging to your country when you love your country. You love your country when you don't know your country. So I go back, you must know to love, to belong, to sacrifice. This is the whole idea of the book. See, this tetralogy or triad, I mean, the 4 steps. So this is the thing, and about making the book in Arabic, in illustrated, in simple way. And as I told you, when my dear friend, the dean of the archaeologists in Egypt, Professor Ali Biradwan, ربنا يديله الصحة, helped me by reading at the book. And the first question he said, is this academic or public? I said, God forbid, it's not academic, it's for the public. And then he started putting, as if he is making a dissertation. He helped me a lot. And of course, I will hope to see him, to show him this book when it's finished. I think he's in his summer vacation still. So it is for the people.
So you have decided to divide the book into 4 volumes, and specifically 3 volumes and the annex in the end.
The appendix. Yes.
The appendix. So the 3 volumes, the first volume is dealing with the pre-dynastic period and the pharaonic part of Egypt until the last pharaoh of Egypt. And the second book is, or the second part of the book is talking about the what they call the Greco-Roman period and the Christian period, of course, and the Islamic period. And then the third part. So tell us about why did you divide them, although history is continuous, and what made you decide to divide every section in the section that it has?
Okay. This book tells the story of Egypt from the 5th millennium BC. You remember that the calendar, which was invented in Egypt, was in 4,000 and few years. When we make a mistake in a couple of 100 years in Egyptian history, it's not a big mistake.
It's not a big deal.
It's not a big deal. And this is when they discovered that the Sirius, the 2 stars, Sirius, they appear above the horizon by the coming of the flood to Aswan. And here starts the thing, the whole calendar. And the calendar we use today of the 30 months, the 30 days a month, to 24 hours a day, and this years of 365 days and 1 day every 4 years. This is all Egyptian invention. The Nile and the stars, the clear sky of Egypt. Okay, so this long history, how to divide, and I kept facing this thing when they talk about Alexandria and this Greek. I get really unhappy when they describe that this is whatever it is. And then I said, okay, I will make this as the symphony of the history of the civilization of Egypt. And you could see this histogram of the Egyptian, which I invented. It tells you the whole thing, which is the peaks of progress and the depths of decadence. It's very simple. Back to our why I classified this way. Okay, so the first movement of the symphony, and it is based on the languages used in Egypt. The first movement is the ancient Egyptian language. By the way, it's a mistake to call it hieroglyph. Hieroglyph is a way of writing. It's not the language. The language is an ancient Egyptian, and I'm avoiding pharaonic. I will come back to it, but I'm going to ancient. And this is for almost 3,000 years, a little bit more than 3,000 years, okay? And the second movement is the Greek language, started from the Ptolemies and continued till the the advent of the Arabs into Egypt, 900 years.
So 332 BC with Alexander the Great coming to Egypt.
Yeah,
And-
but
and
actually 300 when the Ptolemies came and established a government, and the language became here. But if you remember the stone, the declarations, it comes hieroglyphs, Demotic, and Greek. So even the Ptolemies knew that the Egyptian now coming top on the stone. Okay, then became the Arabic language the last 1400 years, the three movements. And this symphony, who is playing? The player is always the Egyptian. You guys are playing all the time. And the Egyptian is not only the one who is living, who was born, born in Egypt. Anyone born or living in Egypt and loved Egypt and give his or her life to Egypt, sacrificed to Egypt and glorified Egypt, is an Egyptian. And nothing on earth, no color, no race, no gender, no religion can stop the inviting this person to be an Egyptian or to give this person the right to be an Egyptian. And many examples in our history is like that.
That's why you always hated when you were teaching us back in the 80s the idea of saying the Greco-Roman period, because you were always telling us that these Ptolemies are more Egyptian than you are, right?
Of course. When do you think that Cleopatra the Seventh, after 300 years living in Egypt, was still Macedonian or Greek? No, of course not. Then the throne in Sweden is French, the throne in Denmark is Danish, the throne in Britain is German.
Yes.
It's not. It's part of the nation. Anyhow, back to this book. So I divided this and then became the old history, one volume. Then this is the intermediate period, this one, because it's usually with the colonization of the Romans, it's decadence. Then the modern history, Islam, it came up, especially when we regained our independence by the Ptolemies, Ikhshids, Fatimids, Ayyubids, Mamluks, Salatin, Sultan, Mamluks. We were independent. And this is very big peak, okay? So this is the fourth movement, actually, the fourth, and then the modern. This is no. This is the modern. This is the contemporary history. So it's old. This is intermediate. This is modern. This is contemporary.
So the modern area is you're talking about the Islamic period,
Yes.
including especially the independent Egypt, which is during the Ptolemaic times, the Ikhshidian time, and of course during the Fatimid, and followed by the Ayyubids
Yeah, all the three.
and the Mamluks.
Till the Ottomans occupied us.
Yes, and of course,
And then we regained our independence.
and you totally agree that the Ottomans is a big period of decline.
Of course, like the Roman. These are the two major decadences in our history. But our history is so long, can accommodate 900 years of decadence. I would say when we went to Ibn Tulun, as told you, this is the only big monument, architectural monument that is built and remains since Cleopatra the Seventh. 900 years Egypt was in darkness. But Egyptian history is so long, it accommodates to these things. Don't worry. But then, how did I divide it into three? I wanted this to be small so that you can take it into bed with you. Each one should be small to take it in bed with you and enjoy it. Okay, but all of them should be in one box so that when your kids coming asking us, go and look at the history book of Uncle Nasser, and then you also sneak behind them and go and read something in it. So this was my goal to make this book.
Perhaps the nice thing about the plates that you have shown
No,
is
it's
that you have the plates, the color
illustrations.
plates that the illustrations that you have used, is that you said that there is nothing better than reading the history, except better than seeing it through the work of artists.
Yes,
And
this
that's
is the
why
thing.
you cherished very much explaining and describing all once and always again and again the idea that art is the one that is producing and attracting the attention of the one who perceive. So we have seen you describing the pyramids, describing how the pyramids were built, at the same time describing the artifacts that were included in the afterlife tombs, and yet they have shown the type of life that the Egyptians were living. And the same thing you went on using during the Ptolemy's period, and of course during the Islamic period. So how really art affected your view of Egyptian history, and at the same time how really art has attracted your attention to love this history of this country?
Great. I wrote in the introduction that history is a big sea with waves and winds. Which vessel would you take to go through it? I chose the vessel of art because it's very neutral and beautiful, attractive. And this would give you a chance to understand the life of the people very easily. Okay? There are two chapters into the ancient part, the first volume. No, the first volume.
Yes.
Here it is. Here it is. The first one. Okay, this is not TV actually. That's why no one is seeing us. Yes, there are two chapters here. One of them is love and compassion in ancient Egyptian art.
Yes.
It's art that tells us the life of the people. There is no way that a male and female will be together, I mean family, without hugging each other. I thought at the beginning, I discovered something. Ooh, they are loving each other. No way. Between the commons and the kings, between the kings and each other, between the kings and the deities, and between the deities. Look at Amun and Mut sitting together. Oh my goodness, it's the most tender way of hugging. So love. See, how can I see that except in art? Okay? Then La Dolce Vita of the Egyptians, the good life of the Egyptians, it's through artifacts, art. Small and large, chairs and beds, linen and utensils, everything is art. And then when you look at the paintings, I urged once one of my dear friends, a great painter in Egypt, I will not mention his name now, but he's definitely one of the greatest painters in Egyptian history. Why don't you write something? He also was a complete artist. He write books. He said, why don't you write a book about ancient Egyptian painting? Because sculpture is and architecture and sculpture is imposing on us always. Okay? But painting was the Egyptian painter never made his work, usually his works, to be exhibited and to be sold in exhibitions. It's made to be locked and not to be seen at all into the tombs. So nobody really saw much of it, but the worth of painting. And by the way, in this book, not all of the plates are mine, so I always put where they belong, which museum, and sometimes I write the source from which I got, because we are academicians, we can't do it otherwise. Okay? For example, this picture of Amun, I took it myself in Luxor. See, when I come here, I say, where is the hand? Where is her right hand? When I went back behind, her palm is patting the shoulder of the Lord Amun. Okay, so love is very important, and you can see that expressed in the art.
And I think one of the very beautiful plates as well is the plate showing the two hands in the Museum of Berlin.
Here it is.
Yes, in the love and sympathy in the touch of two hands together.
I think I'm safe since I'm referring to where they are. Huh?
Yes,
I'm referring. It's documented. So art is very important. The same with when I'm doing probably you looked at the Greek architecture and Greek art. When I say that the Ptolemists who came from the classical world did not leave anything classical in Egypt, because when they built or rebuilt all their temples in Upper Egypt, it was in pharaonic style. So people, what was the Greek I had to put the Greek architecture to know that it's beautiful, but it's the Ptolemies, Greeks are where they did not transplant with them their culture. They made it with the pharaonic. Even when the Roman emperors came, 4 or 5 of them came, they put their fingerprints in pharaonic style. It was très chic at that time.
Yes.
Okay.
Perhaps one of the most beautiful things about the Ptolemaic period, and of course following it part of the Roman period, is the Fayoum portraits.
Yeah.
And I think that not any single museum known museum of Egyptology all over the world, except it has its own group of portraits that it really cherishes, whether this is in Moscow or in Berlin or in New York or in London, and particularly, of course, in Cairo Museum, Egyptian Cairo Museum. Tell us about these Fayoum portraits, because they are always carrying a lot of sympathy, empathy, and beauty behind them. Could you explain to the listeners about them, because they see them and they don't know really what they are. So it's important to give an idea to our listeners that these are all done.
Where do they see them? They are well hidden in the Egyptian Museum in Tahrir.
Yes.
And they are still there. They didn't move it. I was there a month ago there. This is, you remember the mask of Tutankhamun? After mummification, they would put a mask either of gold or of plaster. Okay? At a later time, in the 1st and 2nd centuries AD, which was actually post-Ptolemaic, this is Roman, it's not Ptolemaic, but the culture was still, Greek language was still going on, the second movement of our symphony, the Greek language, okay? They started making this like an icon, painting on wood, and putting this in the place of the face, after the mummification, and they finished the thing. Sometimes we wonder why they are young. Maybe they have been painted before that when they were young, or they died young. Okay? But it might be that they were prepared by being painted when they are younger, and they put it there. And as you said, any museum in the world will consider itself very rich when they have 1 or 2 of these things. It is so realistic. You can't have portrait realism like that from the 1st and 2nd century BC.
And the eyes are so
magnificent. No, BC, AD, I'm sorry, AD.
And the eyes are so magnificent.
Yes. But this is the touch of the Byzantine art. The big eyes, the Byzantine art. But they have another thing which I cherish very much. They paved the way for the rebirth of a new national art in Egypt from the 1st century onward. And this is what I love very much, and it is in the treasures of the Coptic Art Museum. Coptic art, which is a national art that came in Egypt here from the 1st century. Of course, 1st century Christianity started coming in. San Marcos came 72 in Alexandria. The majority of Egyptians did not take this faith immediately. They were still hanging to the pagan gods. Only when Justinian prevented, and this was in 500 and something, the Byzantine emperor prevented any other religion. First, Constantine allowed Christianity to appear, so the persecution became less nominally, because it continued that the sect of Constantine was different from the sect of Alexandria. Yes. Constantine was ruling Egypt, so the poor Egyptian nations and nationals, Coptic, which we call Coptic, they were persecuted because they follow another sect from the capital in Constantine.
They didn't sign on the Chaldean Convention.
Yeah.
451.
Anyhow, so this were the first step of the Coptic art. See,
which is by the way is a very special art, because the Egyptian church has never had a patron. So it's a very popular art that is full of really the emotions of the believers. And that's why it makes it so special art than any other Christian art in the world. Don't you think so, sir?
Not particularly. No, not particularly, because it is made not for persons, but for the Lord,
yes.
For God.
Yes.
When you look at all the periods, even pre-Renaissance, Renaissance, Baroque, and even the Romanesque and the Gothic in Europe, the topics are only that of the Bible.
Yes.
because this is the function of the art done to tell the illiterate people about the history of the holy book.
Yes.
But the main thing is, it started a new type of Egyptian art. The stone carving, the weaving, the paintings. It's first, of course, the motifs were pagan, but that by the 3rd century became Christian. Yes. Clearly Christian. And look at the icons and lots of beautiful things. And this drags me into this comment. There are periods in Egyptian history which are classified on political grounds. Ancient Egyptian, the Ptolemaic, the Roman, then the Arab, then the Ottoman, then whatever it is. They come and go. Coptic is not a political period. It's a movement that started by St. Marcus, who introduced the monotheistic love religion of Christianity, the Egyptian form of Christianity, and it remained because all the others started and ended. No, this remained with all its art, its philosophy, its spirituality, of whatever, its literature. It still started in Alexandria and continued and shall always continue.
And we cannot forget, of course, since we're talking about that, about the great Morus Semika Pasha, the one who has really was the force behind building the Egyptian Coptic Museum. I think his role can never be denied.
Of course.
In collecting all these beautiful artifacts in such a beautiful small museum, but really impressive.
But look at this beautiful thing.
Yes.
The Coptic art was influenced by the Byzantine.
Yes.
When they lived with the Islamic art, see the facade is Hassan al-Akhmar Mosque.
Yes, exactly.
This typically Hassan al-Akhmar Mosque. And look at the Shukshekha and all the inlay became Islamic. Because of course this is a culture. It's nothing to do with the religion.
We are running out of time, but we have to talk about the Islamic period and the Islamic art.
I just finished this, that it is wrong to call the Coptic period of Egyptian history, because it's not a period that started and ended like other periods. It started and continues.
Yes. So we are talking about the very important period of the Islamic history of Egypt, and your taste, your special taste about the Islamic monuments, or the monuments that are forming 1/3 of the Islamic monuments of the whole world are really found near Mu'azz al-Din La Street, and I think it is really very, very impressive about this period. So tell us about this period, starting from the Toulon Mosque, one of your favorite mosques, and onwards.
I just mentioned that this was the only one built and stayed after 900 years. Okay, so yes, this period, again, art. It's a different type of art, because their religion came to them with some ideas. Actually, the Quran never prohibited painting objects or persons or animals, but decorative art, abstract as it is, was very appealing to the elite of the Muslim world, because you know, in the faith in Islam is very abstract. There is no painting for the Lord, not because it's prohibited, because the Lord, it cannot be painted in that teaching. So that religion taught the people to love this abstract, and that's why I say, when you come to some decorative piece of art, it is repetitive, it has no beginning, no end. It is only that you're ready to dive into it and float endlessly into this wealth of beauty. This was appealing to the elite. That's why the artists were commissioned to do it. But of course there are other places, especially in the miniatures and other things and illuminated drawings. It is, of course, figures. And the architecture, and you can see, and we are talking about the heritage architecture monuments of Islamic period. When you go to Istanbul, it is monotonous. It's only one style there. Here, the styles from the Ptolemaic period, from the Ptolemaic period, which is 800s, till the 1800s. So this is an open-air museum which is varying, giving you a wave after wave of variations of aesthetics in architecture. And the big monuments here, I will always say, as you mentioned, Ibn Tulun, then Sultan Hassan,
Yes,
then the complex of Al-Mansur Qalawun,
Yes.
and of course Qutbay. These are pearls, and many. And the pottery and the glass painting and the calligraphy, all these are fantastic.
When we are talking about that, I think there is also the human touch and the human being behavior. For example, when we go through Shara al-Mu'izz al-Din or Mu'izz al-Din La Street, we can find something which is very interesting. We can find that Salih Najm al-Din Ayyub has built his mosque, mausoleum, or the school, and beside it, two of his Mamluks decided to build their own complexes, almost very near and close proximity to their master.
Yeah.
And I think this is very attractive. Qalawun and Zahir Babers built their complexes very nearby to him.
That was closer in time to Najm al-Din, Salih Najm al-Din Ayyub, but it was Izz al-Din Aybak more close to it. But they are not far. They are not far from him. Yeah, of course. They are the beginning of the Mamluk period. The sultans of Mamluks, not the big of
Of the Ottomans, yes.
Okay.
Yes. So, talking about that and talking about especially the mosque of Sultan Hassan Mosque. Sultan Hassan Mosque has a very big place in your heart, and I believe it's one of your favorite mosques, and you always like to visit.
And this of course.
Yes, and of course beside the Mansur Qalawun. But when talking about Sultan Hassan, because it's placed in front of the citadel, and it's attracting the attention of every bystander in the citadel, and everybody is opening his eyes. If he's a king or a sultan after Sultan Hassan, you will find Sultan Hassan telling him, I was here before.
Yeah, it's not only that. Look at the greatness of the thing. And every school in the corner is a complex there. Fantastic. 4 floors for students, rooms and halls for reading of course on the floor, all of it. It's magnificent. Look at that, the burial room with it's amazing. It's beautiful. It's a masterpiece as a complex, as a school, as a mosque, and it is
One of your
special.
favorites.
And also it serves very nice function. When the Rifa'i mosque was built, both made a fantastic ensemble. I love this ensemble very much. Though this is in 1900s,
Yes.
and this is in 1300s.
Yes,
Okay, 600 years in between.
And yet they keep a nice facade.
Who knows about Islamic Cairo? This is a wealth. Another wealth is, of course, the Khedivial Cairo, which starts from Khedive Ismail till King Fuad and King Farouk. And fantastic, architecture. And even a Lebanese one, Antoine Selim Nahas, was a fantastic, from Lebanon, added to the beauty of architecture in Cairo. So the Khedivial started from Ismail till Nahas, not Mustafa Nahas.
Yes.
Okay.
But since we're talking about that, I will tell our listeners a secret. You frequented what is now known as a very big hotel in Zamalek. Your family were friends, were personal friends or family friends to Prince Lutfallah, who was a Lebanese prince.
Yes.
And he has bought the Zamalek Palace, which is now a very well-known hotel. We're not pronouncing its name because it's almost like a advertisement. But this hotel, which is exactly across from Nadi Gezira, from Gezira Club, is having a beautiful palace and a huge garden. You used to play there with the children of the prince, right?
Yes, I used to. Every Sham al-Nisim. Sham al-Nisim is known. That Monday. And we will go there and we'll be served a special orange juice. Still, I remember orange juice. And they had the gabalaya. Yes. This was the fashion of the day.
Near the swimming pool, right? Now it's now the swimming pool.
You go into it and the caves, and for kids to go into this, and it was magnificent.
So tell me, I have a very interesting question, because when everybody, I think, and a lot of our listeners have visited this hotel and have visited the palace and went to functions there, to Aida Hall and all these beautiful halls that a lot of embassies are making their functions and weddings and things like that. What these halls were used for during this, the life and times of the prince over there?
Do you think a royal or semi-royal palace would be only bedrooms? There are big halls for occasions, for dining and for billiard. For example, this palace have a pearl. That billiard room is the most beautiful room in that palace. Fantastic. And of course, dining and meeting people, small groups and big groups. Of course, it must have been like any royal palace, like any castle. It has facilities. Don't you have your reception and your dining room? It's the same. So it's a beautiful palace, and it was strange that when it was open to host the guests of the opening of Sultan, there was no bridge on the Nile. This was 1969, and the bridge of the Nile was in 1869, and the other one is 1871. So Eugenie and Franz Joseph of Austria, they went by boat. They crossed the Nile by boat.
And they lodged in this beautiful palace.
Yes,
right?
yes.
They call it Sarai Zamalek, or what?
Yes, yes.
The Palace of Zamalek.
Palace of Zamalek. Yes.
And it was a hotel in the 60s. I think it was called
Yes, Omar Khayyam. It's horrible.
Yes,
but now it's a nice place, and palaces are good. I wrote about the chapter of Khedive Ismail about his achievement. He built palaces, but I said this was the fashion of the day, but it remained for us.
Well,
Such an interesting voyage
through the history of Egypt, through ages. And Dr. NASSER Kotby, Professor of Phoniatrics, my mentor, and Professor of Phoniatrics and Otolaryngology in Ain Shams University, and at the same time an expert in history and a tourist guide.
Yes,
a certified chef and somebody who speaks 6 or 7 languages. It was a great pleasure and a great honor to have you today. Yes, in this beautiful
Thank you very much.
in Cairo.
Thank you.
Interesting.
Thank you.
And by this we come to the end of Word of Info with Professor NASSER Kotby, Professor Emeritus of Phoniatrics and Otolaryngology at Ain Shams University, Dr. Amr Mabrouk, Professor Plastic Surgery at Ain Shams University, Dr. Mohammed at the controls. I'm Najla Naguib. See you next Thursday, same time, same station, FM 95.4.